Hello everybody and welcome back to Ren Gaming. I want to have a little talk to you tonight about overclocking, what it is or what it does, how does it affect your system, what tools do you need, and how do you do it basically. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to do it because I am no expert at this. I've managed to get a stable 4.6 on my system. It's taken lots of mucking around because I kind of had to teach myself. I had some great help from a friend of mine called Pete. Thanks mate, who really helped me out almost 2 years ago when I first built my first PC. And without Pete's help and without YouTube and stuff like that, I could never have done it. So thank you mate, much appreciated, top bloke. So in this video we're going to have a little look at how to overclock in the BIOS. It is, again, very basic, and I only show you the basic tools because, like I say, I'm not an expert at it. We don't go into overclocking RAM because I don't know how to overclock RAM. We look at overclocking graphics cards, even though I've already done a tutorial on how to overclock cards. We're not going to go too much into how to overclock, but I just want to show you what you can gain from doing it. And a little look at overclocking SSDs. And that's something most people kind of don't think about, but I'm lucky I've got a Samsung SSD, the 840 Evo, and they come with this little tool called Rapid, and it's a kind of really nice easy way to cheat because you can boost the speeds madly crazy. So sit back, watch the video, I hope it makes sense, and then at the end of it I'm going to come back with a little conclusion. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get into your BIOS, which generally is a case of either when you first turn the PC on or when you restart it, hit F2 or delete and it will go into the BIOS. Now on this Asus Sabertooth I've got it set so it boots me straight into advanced mode because that is what we will need and that is what we'll be using for this. So like I say, this is very basic, I'm not going to go crazy, but as you can see at the top, CPU mode speed 46, and then target DRAM speed is 1866. Now I haven't overclocked my RAM in this, but there is a very easy way to get it up to speed, and I can show you that as we go down. So at the top, XMP. Now what this does is 99.9% of the memory you buy these days has an XMP profile. If it's supposed to run at 1866, you click XMP profile 1 and it will boot into 1866. If it's supposed to be 2133, then you kind of get the gist. When you do put your memory in here, it will be running at 1333 because that is what it does, and you will need to go in and change it. So you can either go and you can set the XMP profile and it will pick it up automatically, or you can go down and you can change it to 1866. Now if you wanted to overclock this to get it to run any higher, that is something completely different, something I don't know much about, so I'm not going to show you just in case you fuck it up. And I don't want to be responsible for machines exploding and stuff like that. Okay, right, so let's talk about the processor. Now, a quick and easy and dirty way of doing things with Intel K series processors. Now the K on the end is important because it means they're unlocked. If you look at Intel's range, most of them you can't muck around too much with, and they are a fixed output. The K series has unlocked multipliers, and what that means is when you see down here, the multiplier would generally be 35. Well, it is 35 on the i7-3770K, but what we've done, we've had a bit of a play around. We've got this one running at 4.6. Multi-core enhancement enabled, turbo ratio manual, that's what we've done. So you go turbo and you manual and you click in these and you change them to 4.6. okay. Ratio synchronizing control enabled, and what that does, that makes everything run at 4.6, all 4 cores. Now I haven't touched anything down here. Memory frequency is set at that anyway. But what you will need to do, you will need to go into CPU, change it to manual on this one here, and you'll need to change the voltage because this runs at, I think it's 1.15 out of the box, and unless you're very, very lucky, you're going to need to add some voltage to this thing to get a stable overclock. So if you're looking at an i7-3770K to get 4.6, 4.7, you're going to be looking at around 1.3. Now if you watch my previous videos, you know I've got a bit of a bitch of a chip. I can get it to run at 4.7, but it gets so hot, it's unbelievable, and that's with a H105 on it as well. So I've kind of kept it low, and we're keeping it at 4.6. But as you can see, I pumped the voltage up to 1.29 flat, and that is really all you have to do. Everything else is set on auto. We don't have to touch anything else. Now, a quick look in advance, but we don't have to do anything down here at all. And then we will exit, discard changes. You would normally hit save changes and exit, but I'm not going to do it because I don't need to. So discard and exit, and then it boots back up, and we will come back to the screens and I'll show you what it looks like in a tick. Right, so if you have been successful in your overclock and you have successfully booted back to your dash, or whatever you're using, this is Windows 8, so we have to go through the horrible Metro window, but we get back here. There's a couple of things you're going to need to do. Now, I know my system is stable at 4.6 and I haven't changed anything as we've been going, but what you need a program. It's here, it's called CPUZ, and what this does, I can't make it any bigger, sorry. This shows what you've got. So it's an Intel iCore 3770K at Ivy Bridge. It shows the voltage at the moment at 1.3, which is actually a little bit higher because it's running at 1.29. It shows the frequency at just under 6 at the minute. And when we look at the memory is showing at 933.2. So when you times that by 2, that's 1866. And it also shows the clocks 910, 927. And when we go into here, we've got slot 2 and 4. Shows the XMP profile that we did in the BIOS, which is auto, comes out at 910, 927 at 1.5 volts, 933, 1866. Very, very easy, and it's a fantastic tool because it shows you all the changes you make. The second thing we're going to need is real temp. Okay, so let's get rid of that for a minute. What real temp does is it monitors the temperature of all your cores. So if you're running a 4-core system like this, it shows all 4. If it was an i3, for example, or the new Pentium Anniversary Edition, which is an awesome chip, if you want a budget, buy it. It is fantastic. It would only show 2, but I know it shows 4. And the temperatures idle at the moment, they're okay. You know, there's no load on it. You can see it's about 4.45. Temperatures mid 30s, I think we could say. It also shows the max, which Intel i7s are set to 105 degrees. Not that I would ever recommend getting anywhere near 105 degrees, because you will make something catch fire, and seriously, you're just going to fuck your shit up, and you don't want to be doing that. And down here it shows the minimum and it shows the maximum that you've got to as well. Right, so we're also going to need a tool that is going to stress the CPU to maximum, basically. And what we're going to do, we're going to use a tool here called Prime 95. It's basically a benchmarking program, but what it does, it stresses the absolute arse off your processor. It puts hundreds of thousands of calculations through it. It keeps it running at around 100%. It does dip and it does dip and increase, but it keeps it running as hard as it can for a long time. And now you can actually keep this running for a couple of hours, and I would recommend leaving it for at least 2 hours if it's a fresh overclock. People say 24 hours. If you build a system and you overclock it, then stress testing everything's important. And when I first built this system, it's called One. I'm going to call it One. That's its name, so I'm going to call it One, just in case you wonder why I keep saying One. When I first built One, I ran Prime 95 all day. We didn't have any crashes. It was absolutely fantastic. My first build, it was awesome. Anyway, so you have various tests you can do. What we're going to do, we are basically just going to run blend just for the sake of this, so you can see what it does. Now, what this does, and when we look at real temps now, you can see these temperatures here are going crazy because it's going to start getting hot, because this test, like I say, is stressing the shit out of the CPU. So when we look at the top here, you can see it's running at 4.6 and a little tiny bit. Temperatures maximum we've hit so far is 69. Now this will creep into the mid to high 70s the longer it runs. Like I say, I get twitchy at about 80, but it's never got there yet. So but basically, like I say, you need to run this for, I'd say, a minimum of 2 hours. if you know your system and you know how it behaves and you know how it overclocks, 2 to 3 hours is probably going to be enough. But you can leave it on, you can turn your TV or your monitor off, go to the shops, go to the pub, because if it crashes it will blue screen it and it will restart, so you don't have to worry about anything catching fire. So I'm not going to run too much of this because we don't need to keep watching it, so we'll stop it. There we go, and you'll see the temperatures come crashing down madly. Right, there is another tool that I would recommend looking at as well, and that's the Intel Extreme Tuning utility. What this does is it's very similar to Prime in the way it works. You have all your system information up here. You can manually tune, so you can manually make changes in real time. Not that I'd recommend it, I would recommend doing it through the BIOS, not one of these tools. You can benchmark on here, like I say, you can stress test, and you can look at your profiles. Now, processor frequency down here, for some reason there was an update and it's showing a 4.7 when I know it's running at 4.6. You can see everything up here 4.6. But this stress test here, you can actually run it for a month if you want, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to show you just for a minute, and then we'll start testing. What this does, if you look at the CPU utilization, again it's at 100%. It's not using too much memory this time around, but you can see it's running at 1867 down here. And what it does, it shows the temperatures of the 4 cores. Now they are getting a little toasty, but we're not too worried. I've got the fans on the lowest setting because I've been mucking around with it, but there's no thermal throttling involved. The frequency, it's showing at 4.6 solid. It's not dipping, it's not going up and down. Well, it can't because it's set at 4.6. But these are what you need to keep on. That one got to 77 there. You see 77, 77, 79. Like I say, when it starts getting in the 80s, that's when I get twitchy, but I'm not too worried about just running this because I know it can handle it. What you'll get on this as well, this will run and you'll get a small box in a couple of 10-second, 9, 8, 7, down here that either says passed or it'll die in blue screen, and then, well, it's failed basically. Again, I would recommend, if you're going to use this tool, run it for a few hours just to be sure, just to be safe, you know, everything's alright. As long as it says it's passed, happy days. Someone's letting fireworks off or shooting guns or something. Excuse the banging if you can hear it. Right, and you see the temperatures come crashing down again. The maximum we got to was 79, which is just on the cusp of me getting twitchy. I'm going to make a quick break, guys, and we'll come back and I'll show you overclocking on graphics cards. Right, so onto the cards, and there's a couple of tools that we are going to need for overclocking graphics cards. One is a overclocking tool, and we've got MSI Afterburner here, and the other one is a monitoring tool. Afterburner does have the same tool, but I do like to use CPUZ from Tech Power Up. So we'll fire that up. This is the Republic of Gamers skin for it, and I'm sorry I can't make it any bigger, but I'll stick it in front of Arrow's face. There we go. Basically, what this does, and I know I've done a video previously, so we're not going to go too much into how to overclock graphics cards, but it shows you all the information. So it's showing that I've got a NVIDIA GeForce 660 Ti in this build I'm using at the moment. I've actually got 2. So it's running SLI. It shows you what the chip's called, it shows you the release date, it shows you the BIOS version, and as you come down here, all the information up here is everything you will ever need or won't need to ever know. So these cards are both 3 gig. It's showing the latest driver version I've got from NVIDIA as well. So the default clock on these is 1006. Now these are KFA2 or Galaxy, depending what part of the world you're in, and they've overclocked these up to 106. They didn't touch the memory, and the memory on these cards default is 1502. Now we've not been able to get too much on these core wise. Plus 70 was the most I could manage, but memory wise we've got huge amounts on it. We've managed to get plus 700 on here. So let me open up Afterburner and I'll show you what we've done. Right, so let's sort this out. Afterburner, you can ignore the core voltage because even though it's set at 100, it doesn't make any difference. These cards are locked at 1.175, I believe, and they won't go any higher. But you can increase the power limit on these. Now, being overclocked, they already do come maxed out at 125. As you can see here, what we've done, we've increased the core clock by 70. I've had it higher, but I had to wind the memory down, and I've got so much more performance from overclocking the memory. Now, what you have to do with the memory, you have to times that by 4. So basically it was running at 6,000 megahertz effective. But if you go and you look at, he says getting his calculator out, if you look at 1852 times 4, it's running at 7,400 effective now, which is something like a 23% increase in memory, and it's absolutely amazing. And this is kind of the gist of this video. The difference is that it makes when you overclock. So I'm not going to run any benchmarks, I'm not going to bore you with any benchmarks, but there's loads about. We have Valley up here as well, which is very, very intensive. The good thing about Valley is in the top corner when you're benchmarking, it shows your clocks, and it shows your memory, and it shows temperatures, so you know what you're doing and you know if things are getting a bit crazy. Also Firestrike, and I do like Firestrike, so let's close some of this down, and I'm just going to pop into Firestrike, and I want to show you some scores before this system was overclocked. That's not a terribly good one, but it will do. So this was done on the 21st of August, so not too long ago. 9217. Quick look at the details. When we click down, this was running at 1056, and the memory was hardly touched. I only put 50 on it at the time, but the processor was running. The processor, sorry, was running at 4.6, and we got. But what we have managed to do is this. So by overclocking the memory like shit, we have increased our Firestrike score from this to this. So that's a 700 score difference. So when we go into the details, when we look at the details on here, you can click down. So we've got number of cards 2, SLI is on, 3 gig of memory. Like I say, they're running at 1076 megahertz. I can't get them any higher because they become unstable, but here it shows the big increase on the memory. So 1852. Again, the core's running at, sorry, the processor's running at 4.6. It is absolutely fantastic, and I got a little bit of bragging rights, I suppose. When we go into number of GPUs 2, first in the world, baby, yeah. And this is the type of thing I overclock for. One, I want a fast system. I want it as fast as I can possibly get it. Now this isn't terribly expensive. 660 Ti's are, you know, around what the 760s are running at now, maybe slightly under. But if you get good cards and you overclock the shit out of them, that's a fantastic score. It's really, really, really good. Anyway, enough showing off. The last thing I wanted to talk about was SSDs. Now, if you're not running SSDs in your system, you really should. You stick your OS on there, and anything important. I tend to keep benchmarking tools on my SSD as well, because it keeps things nice and quick. But because I use Samsung Evos, they have this tool called Samsung Magician. Basically, what this does is, these are supposed to sequential read 540 and write is 520, but they have this thing called rapid, and rapid mode, basically, look, instead of 540 we're getting 4972, and instead of 520 we're getting 4285. These are stupid fast. It's unbelievable. Even the random reads is up and over what they should be, and all you have to do for this, you just click it on maximum performance. It's really, really, really simple. You hit maximum performance. So you go into rapid mode down here, and you enable, it's disabled at the moment, and it just makes it go like lightning. Absolute batshit fast lightning. You don't have to muck around with RAID setups or anything like that. They're really, really quick. Hey guys, right, so we're going to do a conclusion. I'm going to talk a little bit about what overclocking actually is. So when you overclock something, you're adjusting the core clocks of your CPU or your graphics cards or whatever they are, so hence the term overclocking. Makes sense when you think about it. The reasons people overclock, or the reasons I overclock. I like to overclock because, as I said earlier, I want the fastest system I can get, the best system I can get, the most reliable, one that boots. I turn it on and it boots in Windows in about 8 seconds, maybe quicker. It's just, you know, this is how it is. And if you're buying the best hardware, I say the best. Let's make a cut across that. If you're buying the best hardware you can afford, you want to make it the best you can make it. And again, it's something I've covered in previous videos, talking about how we all want the best. Now, the actual build I did this video on was had two 3 gig 660 Ti's in it, which these days you could get a couple of 760s but perform roughly the same. Now, whether or not you'd be able to overclock the memory quite the same, I don't know. But at the time, this PC was built a year and a half ago now, over a year and a half ago. It was the best I could afford, you know, and those cards were 230 quid each-ish, something like that. But everyone wants to push boundaries. If you're the type of person who just wants to play games, you're not worried about having things the best you can, you don't want to look at benchmarks, then leave things at stock. You don't need to push it. I mean, you only have to look at the consoles. Look at the last generation. The games that were coming out on that were absolutely amazing compared to what was coming out first, because they learned how to use stuff, and they used the system to make things better. And that really, in essence, is what we're doing. We're using our own systems to make things better. Overclocking CPUs, you do need, and you will need, adequate cooling, and I did say in the video earlier, but you will need to have a decent cooler in place. Don't use the stock coolers you get with Intel or AMD chips, because they're rubbish. They'll keep things cool at stock, but once you start putting a few volts through things, things get a bit toasty. So what you want, ideally, you want a custom loop. If you're not into water, or you don't know how to do it, then you want a decent air cooler, or you want a all-in-one. Like I've got a Corsair 105 in this, and it does a great job. And in the video you saw temperatures creeping up ever so slightly, hit 79, which is a bit hot, but I've got this running on these little crazy fan speed controllers at the moment, because I've been playing around with it. I might have to pop them off, because it drops the temps by 5 or 6 degrees. It's amazing. Graphics card wise, you want things to look as pretty as you can get it. This is what PC gamers want, and I've already done a video on the difference between games being fun and looking pretty. But for the sake of what I'm doing, I'm running benchmarks. I'm enjoying running benchmarks. It's good fun, you know. It gives me something to do with this really expensive bit of kit I've got. It's a way to show off, and I did show off because, like I say, the top 660 Ti's in SLI in the world, and we're only talking 2 cards, we're not talking 3, because other people have beaten that on 3, but only by about 100 points, so maybe 1,000 points. So I've got you in my sights, matey, wherever you are. I might see if I can get there. And of course, overclocking on your SSD memory, again, it's just it makes perfect sense. Now, because I don't know how to overclock SSDs if you don't use a tool like Rapid, this is why I didn't go into what to do, because it's a little tricky, and you can fuck things up, and you don't want to do that. Obviously, you're spending all this money on your kit, you don't want to destroy it. So one thing I will say is check, and double check. If you're not sure about voltages, Google it, or leave me a message, or phone a friend up, or phone Pete, because people know how to do this type of thing. So if you're not too sure and you're already going to fry something, have a look on Google. There's so many sites around. So yeah, conclusion, overclocking is worth it. It doesn't matter what you're overclocking. If anyone knows how to overclock RAM easily without changing 400 settings, can you leave me a link? Because can't do it. It's worth it. You want the best you can get, you got to do it. Anyway guys, this has been a bit of a ramble, but thank you very much for watching. Any comments, chuck them underneath. It's Ren Gaming, guys. See you all very, very soon.